So I've got a bit of a real life horror story to tell. I was heading to Jackson, Mississippi, for a music audition for a potential music gig. And whenever I have to travel or stay somewhere, I like to book my things out, especially accommodations, way beforehand. That way it's paid for, it's handled. I don't have to worry about the stress of being on vacation and then wondering, okay, well, where am I staying tonight? So I book, I think it was 3 nights at an Airbnb, which would allow me to do the initial portion of the audition and then also the second part of the audition within 3 days. So I wouldn't have to, leave and then come back. So I got my dates booked out in this little Airbnb, you know, I would say a pretty standard looking modern house, nice furniture, nice kitchen, nice bedrooms. And I see it, and it's got kind of mixed reviews, but people can be a bit needy at times. So I'm like, whatever. It's a listing, I'm going to book it. So that thing is booked. And it comes to, I believe, the night before I'm going to leave, and I get a notification that my Airbnb reservation was canceled, that my refund was processed, and that I would receive it as soon as possible. And I'm thinking, like, dude, what? This is throwing a major wrench into my plans. So I call their customer service, I wait, give them my reservation number, ask them what's up, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we had to delete that Airbnb because there were flags of like domestic violence and abuse at that house, not only from like the host to the person that was working for them, but also it seemed like the person that was working for them might also then take it out on some of the guests that were staying there. So they said, like, you really didn't want to go there. We're sorry, we can help you find something else, but like, it is what it is. And I accepted it. And then I moved on. But then I had to find new accommodations, obviously, because I'm still going. I still have this audition. I've already pushed it back once, and I think it's unprofessional to try to do it again. So I'm looking at hotels, and they are just too much. Like, full disclosure, I am not rich. Kind of live on a budget, so that was throwing a major wrench in my plans. And then I saw like this motel that was not actually too far away from where I had to go. I think it might have been like a 45-minute walk or like a 15-minute trip by public transit. So I said, you know what? Looked at the rooms, looked at the outside, and I said, it looks decent enough. So I go there, do my audition thing. I'm walking to the motel. And you can't really get the layout of a city by just looking at a map, for obvious reasons, or really the environment or culture of the area that you're going to be in by just looking at a map. But it was kind of in like a middle of nowhere off of a highway where the only real businesses nearby were like small Hispanic and Middle Eastern businesses, or McDonald's and Burger King, like not an area that's geared towards neighborhood living. Is just a highway area that people pass through. But I get to the motel, and the front desk person, I walk up, and they are not ready or really attentive for my arrival. And they're like, what's up? What are you doing here? And I was like, oh, I have a room for the next 3 nights. And they were like, no, you don't. I was like, yes, I do. My reservation is right here. And then he calls someone and then comes back, like kind of smirks at me, hands me the keys, and says, "You're in room number two." So I'm like, okay, obviously great start, but it's a small, obviously family run business. They might have just not communicated. And I did book last night, so it hasn't been, 4 or 5 days since I booked. And I get in my room, and at first it looks pretty decent. Um, and then, I stick my things on the bed and I sit down, which was a mistake because it was a box spring. It wasn't a mattress. Like they just put two box springs on each other and then called it a day. So immediately I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be some horrible sleep that I'm going to get, but at least the place looks nice and at least I'm safe, right? So next thing I notice is that even though the floor is swept, like it is nasty. Like I don't think the floor had been mopped in at least a month. And not only that, but there were actually bullet holes in the doors and in the wall, as well as a questionable stain on a part of the bed, which could have been blood, you know? And so I'm like, okay, just gonna survive these 3 days and we'll get through it. The next day, watching some TV, minding my own business, and I get some very, very stern knocks on the door. And I open the door, and it's the reception guy from the day before. And he asks me why I hadn't checked out yet. And I said, because I booked 3 nights. I'm still here for 2 more nights. And he checks my reservation paper and says, "Oh, okay," and then just leaves. And I'm like, dude, that's bizarre. So later on that night, I leave to go and get some nearby food because I was getting peckish. And so get my food. I'm walking back, and then this person yells at me like, "Hey, where are you going?" And I'm in the parking lot of the motel at this point. And so I turn around and there's a fat white guy with a flashlight who is parading as a security officer. And he asked me, "Where am I going?" And I say, "To my room." He's, "Well, if that's true, then show me your key." Show him my key. He checks it and he says, "Oh, okay. Well, just be careful. There's been lots of break ins recently." And to say the least, I didn't really want to know that information, but I suppose the more you know. So now I've got to worry about break ins as well as the reception guy just trying to get into my room. So this is not a very fun experience already. Next day, I had a work obligation. So I went out, did my work thing. And when I came back, the door was wide open with like the cleaning crew cart. But I'm thinking that's odd. People typically wait until after you leave a space to come in and clean the room, unless it's just like a little courtesy clean. But I walk up to the door, I knock so they can see that I'm there. They're a little bit startled, but they, get their things and they leave. And I was really looking forward to having a nice cold beer that I had stashed in my mini fridge. And then I go to the mini fridge, and of course, the mini fridge is empty. And I'm like, I this place is absolutely unbelievable. Um, I guess fortunately only that wasn't the only, that was the last unfortunate thing that happened. The next night was pretty uneventful, and then I left, never to return ever again. And probably never again to Jackson either. Weird place.